Oh boy, we're in, we're recording. This is not actually live because this is not a stream, but this is more of a recording on OBS. Hi, everybody. I missed you all. Thank you to my friends for supporting this video and watching it and giving me some feedback on what to do and what not to do. For today's video, I'm gonna do something that I wanted to do a while ago. My God. Um, if you know me, you know that I've been interested in early retirement for a while. Because guess what? Working that corporate life kind of sucks, and I'm tired of it. So I think since I was in college, I've been reading this blog called Financial Samurai. Um, Now, this is one of the OGs of the FIRE movement. He has been um, writing, I think, since 2010 or 9, basically since this whole thing started. Because FIRE movement really kind of was an outburst of the great financial crisis. People were giving all of their lives and whatnot to corporations in 2007, 2008 happened. They've lost everything. And they're like, I can't bet my life on a corporation. I need to figure my shit out and get the hell out as soon as possible and be able to secure my retirement because working a 9 to 5 for 30 or 40 years kind of sucks. Now, this guy knows a little bit what he's talking about because he used to work in investment banking. He was a banker, um, I think until 2011 or something. So he started blogging right like before he actually left. But he got to become a VP, I think at Goldman Sachs or something. And he realized, as great as the salary that he was getting in that VP life at Goldman Sachs, probably like banking 700 or $800,000 a year back in the Bay Area, he was like, I can't do this because your body is crumbling. You're like, you need more and more, and the stress and anxiety is too high in banking. So he started this blog. So I highly recommend this. But the thing is, this blog is very US centric. And I think it's targeted to people who really are very high income earners. Like I think his audience is mostly people who work in tech, banking, consulting. So like people who are like easily making six figures a year, and they have the capacity to like heavily invest and save in order to hit like an early retirement by 40. Because his like kind of targets is to retire by 40 and to be able to have a portfolio that generates $200,000 of passive income by 40. That's very, very hard to do. Now, our conversation is not about that. What we're really interested in is the fact that this guy does sometimes consulting for clients. And one of the things that happened to uh, come across his, I guess, desk was this family that supposedly is making $500,000 a year, and yet somehow are living paycheck to paycheck. And he goes on in this whole article basically talking about like, oh, is like you could sometimes you think $500,000 is a lot, but it's not, and blah blah blah. But then he goes on, and I think the part where like it's kind of like this is where he does his analysis. He's like, okay, let's analyze like how is this family making half a million dollar? Because remember, this is $500,000. It's not like it's peanuts. This is not a family scraping by on $60,000 a year. This is the family making $500,000. This could be like like two software engineers. Well, maybe not two software engineers, but you know two people. One is making 300,000, one is making 100,000 or something like that. Or two of them making 200,000, and supposedly they have kids. Okay, they have two kids in fact, and this is their income statement for the year. And as you can see here, they make 500K. Now they have a very high tax rate, supposedly because these people are based in New York City and they're in their early 30s. This is a pretty good goddamn fucking like. If you're in your early 30s, you're making $500,000. Now, granted, you do live in one of the most expensive places in the world. You are still making a very good amount of money. Now, the thing is, after he does all his calculations, what we're interested in is digging into these calculations because this is where you're like, man, if you're making $500,000 and you're left with $7,300 at the end of the month, sorry, at the end of the year, well, there's something problematic in what your lifestyle creep must be in there. $500,000. Let's remember, this is $500,000. Okay, $500,000. Him, the husband and the wife, both of them are maxing out their 401k contributions. This is like equivalent to if you're based in Canada through RSP, sorry. So they basically are maxing out their contributions 18,000, 18,000. Although granted, for somebody who makes for a household that's basically making about $500,000, that seems like a low amount to contribute to 401k. Like that but my assumption here is they're maxing out their 401k. Okay, now one thing is these guys are still contributing to their retirement. So they cannot be saying, "Oh, we have no money left," and blah blah blah. No, you are max, because somebody who's actually scrapping by on $60,000 a year for a household, they're not they're not contributing to their retirement. So you, as a household, you're doing great because you're still able to contribute to your retirement. Now, after that, they basically have this remaining salary, and so they're taxed at a 40% effective tax rate. That is a very high tax rate. We do have to agree, okay? Like 40% is a pretty high tax, but again, they're making $500,000, and so anywhere in the U.S. where you make that kind of salary, I mean, you can make that kind of income if you're in some sort of like in the middle of nowhere. That's possible. But a lot of the jobs that allow you to make $500,000 or more in your early 30s are based in New York, Seattle, San Francisco. So you got to take the tax hit. 40% is a lot. We can all agree on that. So they're effectively left with about, $278,000. Now here where it gets crazy. Okay, these two people have kids. Okay, they have kids. That's why I tell my friends, do not have kids. Because if you start to making a lot of money, you'll be like, oh my god, I need to make up for like I need to help my kids. They need to have a head start in life. So what do? Well, guess what? Childcare, two children, you pay 42,000. What the fuck do you pay $42,000 on for? For two children, $42,000. What? Why do you pay 40? Like, let's try to figure this shit out. Why does he pay? Why does this family pay $42,000 on their kids' child care expense? Surprise! Okay, children are expensive. I tell my friends this all the time. I tell them all the time. You cannot have kids, guys. If you have kids, as responsible as I know that you are, the moment you have kids, that responsibility is gonna creep in and be like, oh my god, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this for them and that for them. Ba da dee ba da da. Children are expensive, especially in big cities. Who knew this? Without children, a $500,000 couple would likely never be scraping by. Louder for the people in the back and behind the camera. Without children, a 500,000, like a household that makes $500,000 per year would likely never be scraping by. Okay? But imagine you can be making $500,000 a year. A decision to have kids fucks you over financially. Okay, and this is where it gets funny. They're actually getting a discount with two kids. Can you believe it? $42,000 per year. Given childcare for one kid costs closer to 30K. What the fuck? If the couple wants to send their kids to private grade school after, then they'll have to basically be spending $55,000 a year. This is apparently what crazy tech workers spend in San Francisco to send their kids to private high school. That is wild. That is fucking wild. So you're basically telling me that people in San Francisco can spend upwards of $100,000 per year on their kids' high school tuition. That is insane. That's as much as you would pay if you're going to Harvard. So basically, there's absolutely no fucking difference between a private high school and like Harvard or like Princeton or whatever. If you're sending your kids to private, like if you're putting full tuition for like these kids, that is insane. That is freaking insane. And it's more insane when you know that a lot of public schools in the U.S. sometimes outrank these private schools when it comes down to total admissions to these Ivy League like schools. This is wild. Okay, this is 42,000. How about you send your kids to like I don't know public school? How about one of you stops working, reduces their hour of work, and I don't know. How about you call your grandpa or grandma, tell them take care of the kids. I'll give you 10. I'm sure if you tell your parents, basically effectively the kids' grandparents, I'm gonna give you $10,000 per year. Okay, just 10 to just take care of my kids. I think they'll be happy to do it. I mean, assuming they're retired. Okay, like I think they'll be okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. $42,000, or just freaking pay someone in the gray market. What are you losing? Like $42,000 for two kids is insane. Okay, then food for four, including date nights every 2 weeks, 23,000. What the $23,000? What do these people eat? 23,000. So how much is that per person? So if you do the math, that is basically $5,750 per person. I mean, per year, which I suppose is okay, 400 something per month. I think that is. I can see that. I can see how that could be the case. So I'm not gonna talk too much about this because it's good to spend money on like good groceries and like healthy shit. And in the U.S. they pump up their groceries like with all kinds of crazy things. So people are if you have the money, you better buy things from like green walls or wall greens or whatever the name of that store is, so that you're not like, you know. But now we move to number three, mortgage. Oh my God, this one is a big one, 60K, 60K. Now like just let me tell. This is what like your kids basically cost you per year almost 80% of your mortgages. Is my math right here? I think it is, but if it's not, I don't care. But but that is a pretty high mortgage too. So what the hell are they spending this mortgage stuff on? Okay, so what did they? Well, how expensive is this house? Okay, so 5,000 a month in a mortgage expense. Okay, yeah, 5,000 for a broad. Okay, 5,000 a month in mortgage expense bought this family a 1.5 million dollar, 1,700 square foot condo in Brooklyn. That yeah, this is sadly this is it. This is the reality. I mean, I don't think you can find apartments today in Brooklyn for this price because this is like a they wrote this back in okay this has been updated but I remember I've seen this back in 2000 like 15 or 16 or whatever. So I mean these numbers probably haven't been updated in a while, or maybe he downgraded the housing because I think like well let's go up again where I think I lost the thing. Yeah, I think like the yeah the 1.5 million dollar 1,700 square foot condo in Brooklyn. I mean that is this is the sadly this is the reality. But then what interest rate are these people paying for this mortgage for this house? Because then it can well in the US they have these like fixed more okay whether let's say for rates for 30-year fixed, 15-year fixed, and blah blah blah, now close to 6-year lows as the Feds have decided to step up. Anyway, we don't care about this, but I think this is reasonable. I mean, yeah, I mean this is I'm not saying that they can't find houses that are cheaper in the New York area, but like it is true that a couple that makes $500,000 yeah will go 5,000. I mean people are literally paying $3,000 a month for like a tiny bedroom in Manhattan. Now these people have moved to Brooklyn, so it is understandable that they might be paying that much in mortgage payments every year. And honestly, they're kind of paying into like their equity somehow. So it's not like they're although I don't like thinking that renting is throwing money out of the window because you're still paying for a place, but they're technically building some sort of equity. So again, somebody who's like they may you can say they're half poor, but we've already looked at the childcare stuff, which frankly is insane. I mean, basically, if these two people didn't have kids, they'll have like 49, yeah, $49,000 left off. That's it. That's it. That's my advice. I'm a financial coach. You come to me, I'm like, okay, so you have to. How about you donate your kids? Oh shit, you can't do that. How about you return? What's the return policy on your kids? Oh shit, there's no return policy on the kids. How about you? Oh no, we can't say that. Okay, well, you know, you're stuck with the kids, which is insane because what I think is this is going to actually increase over time because these children are young. I assume and he said it that as soon as they go to high school, you have to pay more money, maybe 100,000 per year. And guess what? They're going to go to university, and you have to pay even more money on them. And guess what? At some point, they're going to go in the job market and start working, and the housing is going to be so freaking expensive that they cannot get into the housing market if you don't give them a little bit of help for that down payment. So guess what? This is just only increasing. But it's true that the mortgage at some point is going to drop. But anyway, home maintenance 5,000, I can understand that. Property taxes, $20,000 in property tax. What the fuck? That is a lot. How much are property taxes in New York? 20,000? What the hell is that? Is a lot of money. On 20,000 out of what? Like 1.5. But that is insane. Like first of all, there's literally no like 1.3%. But that is not. This can't be true because there's literally no municipality in the world that values a property at the actual market price. I've never seen a property valued at its actual market value. I've never seen this. So like, at best the value the value of the house for tax purposes is probably around $1 million. It can't be 1.5. It can't be the market price. It's never the market price of the house. So I think this is a bit high, but like 1.3%. That is the property tax rate in New York. That is a lot of money. and plus $2,500 of insurance. I mean, if you're paying that much in property taxes, I assume insurance is pretty high because there's theft and whatnot. Okay, then, well, sadly you can't. What are you gonna tell them? Downsize your house. Don't buy a house that's stupid. That's why like a lot of people are house poor. Well, guess what? Because of this, because they buy things that they cannot afford, or they kind of squeeze themselves a little bit. But imagine this couple loses their job. Imagine this freaking downturn in the economy. They lose their job. Well, they lose their house. They lose. I don't know. It's just I don't know. I feel bad for them, but again, they're making $500,000. So, do they even have like a an emergency savings account? Because I don't see any. I just see like the only thing here that I see that went into some sort of financial product is basically their 401k. I'm not seeing anything here going into some sort of savings account or some tax-free tax advantage account. Okay, well, let's just continue here. Property insurance 2000, 3 vacations a year, 18,000. I mean, it's for 4 people. It's yeah. I mean, there's people who spend all like yeah. I mean, I think it's fine. If you're making $500,000 and not taking 3 vacations a year, I mean, what's the point of working that a job that probably induces you a lot of stress? So 3 vacations a year for a family of four, 18K, it's fine because there's people who spend 18K per year just as a single person. But you know, and then they have car payment. Why do they have a car if they're living in Brooklyn? Okay, now this is something I have a problem with. Okay, because this does not make sense to me. To me, as an individual, to me, as a person, I don't think this family needs a car. Needs to drop to have a BMW 5. Well, although granted, I mean, how much are they spending per month on this? 800. Oh my god. I mean, yeah, that's not a lot of money on a car in the U.S. 800 per month. It doesn't matter. But you could say, oh, they can cut on the car. Like they're yeah. But this car, if they have a car, they must have parking for that car, unless they have a parking with their house. But ultimately, they could drop the car. They're in Brooklyn. They're in New York. The public transit is fantastic. They travel only 3 times a year. So what's the point of having a car? You can just rent it. So you can kind of maybe like try to skip this, but car insurance 2000. Holy fuck, car insurance is $2,000. What the? That is hot. Oh my god! Thank God that we're living in Quebec. 2,000 is a lot of money. Because when you think about it, the total cost of car ownership is actually like more than 9,600. It's 9,600 plus the 2,000 for insurance plus the 5,000 they have to spend on gas. So we're talking about 16,600. So maybe they actually don't need a car. Maybe they just drop the car. They live in Brooklyn. New York has great public transit. If they're traveling just 3 times a week, 3 times a year, I don't know if they do like short weekend trips or not, but they could just drop the car and rent when needed. Because I'm sure they're not going to spend $16,600 on just rentals. Okay, so life insurance. I don't know what life insurance is. Probably for the kids. They had 2,000 in case they die or something. Okay, 2,500. Yeah, it's something to if you have kids, I think if you have kids, people, you got to get life insurance. You don't want to be dying, a car accident or something, and you don't leave anything to your kids. Because this world is expensive. Okay, that child care is expensive. Okay, so if you're not there, imagine what's gonna happen to the kids. So you better buy up on that life insurance. Clothes for 4 people, no fancy bags, shoes or threads, 9,500. Well, I don't know. Is it like again 700 per month for 4 people? I'm sure a lot of it goes into like yeah. I mean, it is possible. Even if you didn't have kids, I'm sure they'll spend this much. Because there's all the hair stuff and all of that. I think they include that in the clothes. Children's lessons. Okay, now this is okay. Again, so actually turns out the children don't cost $42,000 per year. They actually cost an extra 12,000. Okay, an extra 12,000 for what? Sports, piano, violin, and academics. I'm telling you, these parents are crazy. These parents want to like basically have their kid get into Harvard or Princeton or what like this is they're like my kid needs to like I need to they need to be in ballet, they need to take violin classes, they need piano. I need my kids to be able to get into Princeton. Bro, chill. This is half this is a self-imposed problem. I'm sorry, but like you don't necessarily need to spend 42,000. I know a lot of people from New York who didn't spend $42,000 per year on their kids. That did fine. They went to NYU. They went to like different universities. They managed to get into good schools. I think these parents are like these are helicopter parents that hyper type A parents that want their kids to be type AAA or triple A. Like I mean these kids want these parents want their kids to like be like these prodigies of whatnot and guarantee basically acceptance in Ivy League from the age of 12. $12,000 on this bullshit. I mean, just I don't know. This is crazy, crazy stuff. Charity. Oh my god. Oh my. $18,000. Feed the children and college alumni. Damn, they're very generous people. And I am very skeptical that they actually donate $18,000 to like feed the children and college alumni. Maybe a lot of it goes to the college alumni association. $18,000, like that is insane. Yeah, I agree. Can be cut. Cut the fucking 18,000. Like, I mean, 18,000 equals 3.6% of the family's gross income, which is in line with the average donation percentage by income. Yo, they each give $7,000 to charity they strongly believe in, and each give 2,000 a year each back to their respective undergrad alma mater. You know how often my university calls me and sends me emails asking for a donation? So many fucking times. And guess what? I will never, ever, and tell ever donate money to them. Like ever. Because they've taken so much already. And frankly, the ROI was not that great. Okay? So, no. Donations to universities is a big no. This is a very American thing. Like, this is like crazy. Like, I mean, this is insane. 18,000 in donations. Now, I can't speak to the other part. Okay, giving away to charities that you care about. Because again, people value different things. But I mean, if you're living like paycheck to paycheck, I mean, you maybe, like there's religious reasons why people donate. There is like, there is sometimes other things why, people connect seriously with like a certain cause and they don't. But I wouldn't donate. Okay, the only person worth a donation in this world is myself. So I ain't donating money to anybody, especially $18,000. Okay, not if I donate, it's $1,000 max. 18,000 is insane. My God, 18,000. It's a lot of money. And what else do they have? Undergraduate and graduate student loan debt. $32,000 student loan debt. Wow, that is a lot of student debt. Now again, this is an American thing. Like I mean, and I thought a lot of people I mean, maybe these people should have actually tried to pay down their debt before they decide to have kids. How about that? Maybe that was maybe pay down your debt, your college debt before you actually like. Wow, $32,000. My God, that's a lot of student debt. That's almost like half what they pay in their mortgage for their mortgage. I mean, if you know what, had they decided not to go to some like fancy school, but I guess the question could be made: oh, if they didn't go to this fancy school, maybe they wouldn't have been able to get the jobs that pay them this much amount of money. But I mean, this is all I don't know, man. It just feels like it's a lot of money. Student loan expense. Okay, let's just understand. Low student tuition runs 50,000 a year for 3 years. Okay, I mean, I don't know. Some people conveniently forget that in order to get a high-paying job, it often takes a lot of expensive education. It is true. Yeah, I mean, it is, particularly in the U.S. It would be nice if blah blah blah. Too bad it's not. Yeah, they could be a doctor. Yeah, they could be a doctor. I mean, I mean, yeah, but what can you do? I mean, if that's the debt that they have, that's the debt that they have. They're stuck with it. What can you do? Something always comes up 10,000. That's a lot of money for something always comes up. Okay, so maybe we could argue that maybe this is their like like safety cushion, and whatever is left here is basically added to some sort of emergency account. But I mean, I don't know. Unless you track blah blah blah. Okay, kids are expensive. I think that's the whole takeaway I have from this whole thing is kids are expensive because honestly, If they didn't have kids, they wouldn't have needed like a $1.5 million. Because why do people buy big houses? I mean, why would a single person or a couple with no kids buy a big house? It's just more maintenance, more cleaning. Like, why would you buy a gigantic $1.5 million house if you don't have kids? I mean, you need, like, it's like, what's so honestly, so much of the financial stress here comes from the fact that they have kids and they want to maximize the chances that these kids have a great life ahead. So they're spending so much money on private tuition, on classes. Uh, they had to go to this bigger house so that their kids have space. They probably got that car because they're like, oh, the kids can't take public transit and blah blah blah. Like, so. I mean, the life insurance is because they have kids. The charity, they can get rid of that. But I mean, literally, the whole thing, the reason why this family is struggling is because they have kids. Okay, I push back one. Here, okay, so some people are saying the tax rate is too high. Okay, well, I don't know. I'm not a tax expert. The second pushback, a $1.5 million home is way too expensive. I agree with that, but again, New York is an expensive. I agree, but I think if you're a family in New York, that is what you're gonna be paying. Yeah, like in New York, that's welcome to New York, I guess. Um, who needs two cars in New? I agree. I think this, yeah, yeah, they need to get rid of the car. I agree. Yes, yeah. Here, 12,000 in music. Who needs to spend that much money? So these are all the arguments against it. Okay. Yeah. And interestingly, apparently he says here that the more a household makes, the less likely their child will be able to earn the same amount of money and live the same quality lifestyle. At some point, upward mobility ends. I think upward mobility has like I think it has like a U-shaped curve. Like that there's a lot of high upward mobility in the lower income brackets. I think that's actually the case. There's possibility, but within that same bracket. I'm not saying that it. I try to break these things into three different components. There's like a U shape. There's low income bracket, middle income bracket, and very high income bracket. I think there's a lot of mobility in the lower one, so you can move up that bracket a lot. But only within that bracket, I mean, it's hard to move from the lower income bracket to that middle income bracket. And then within the middle income bracket is, I think, where the mobility is very flat, meaning that if you're like middle income, you tend to stay in that. That's like, it's quite hard to, like, the taxation is hard. Like, the tax system kind of pressures you in a way, but also like the jobs that you have and the job market is quite competitive, and the scope for growth is minimal. I mean, not minimal. I mean, there's some growth, but like a lot of that growth ends up being absorbed by real estate and taxes. And then there is like the rest, like generational wealth, kind of, where basically just by a virtue of inheritance, significant amount of money and the effect of compounding, you basically just your wealth grows. Now, some people will argue against this and say that that is not the case because so many wealthy families back in the, from the previous century have lost all of that weight today. But again, I think again that's a very U.S. centric view. If you were to like look at the world as a whole, I don't believe that that is the case. But you know, these people are left with 7,300. If I was making $500,000 and I look at my balance sheet and I'm like, all I'm left with, the cash increase is 7,300. I'll be like, red flags, red fucking flags. 3 vacations a year, what a joke. No, no, these people deserve the 3 vacations a year. At least they're building a 401k balance and home equity. Agree, yeah. Where is the line item for college savings? That is true. In America, they have these like these vehicles to save for college. I think we have them in Canada too. So yeah, that is a good point. What aren't they saving for their kids' education? They're dropping so much money on the childcare that has barely any impact on their on the kids' like schooling outcomes. Maybe like split that in half and contribute to your kids' college education. High income, lots of stress. I agree. It's kind of weird, and isn't it crazy that this is the world we live in? Isn't it? This is, and you know, like, and then people wonder why is it that people have there's this kind of sense of we've given up. Like, oh, you know, why are people so interested? Why would you like work so? Because this job that gives you $500,000 per year is a very stressful job. Okay, let's see, we can all agree on. Now, again, this is a household income, so maybe they both have jobs that make 250 each. But this is, if we live in a world where this is what we need, like if this is the kind of financial stress, because this is financially stressful. Okay, being in this situation is financially stressful. If this is what it takes, then what's the point of trying? And then people be like, oh, but why don't people have kids? Well, guess what? This is the reason why people don't want to have kids. Why are people not interested in like fighting and do that and that? Because guess what? Like, you know, like they can thrive and go up the, you know, the income ladder, and what are they gonna do with that money? You know, like it's just they'll be like, okay, well maybe I'll buy a house now, and then they buy a house and they're trapped. They're trapped. That's it. That the house is so expensive now that they buy it. Now they have to pay these incredibly high amounts of money every month to keep that house, and then there's the fear of losing that house. So they're like in the treadmill, and you know they're stuck. But you know, if you're poor, you're you know it's just, this is the tragedy of our time. Okay, the promise of capitalism and an abundance of choice, and not really. Like, look at this. I mean, this is. I mean, on one side, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing sending your kids spending almost like $60,000 a year on your kids? But at the same time, I'm like, well, you know, if I was making $500,000, knowing what I know about the world today, I actually might want my kids to have as many privileges as possible, because this world is very, very competitive. But then again, I guess that's one reason why I don't want to have kids, because I feel like it's just all, you know, why send them into this like extremely competitive savannah? So yeah, I guess the lesson here, if I'm being honest, is just don't have kids. Don't have kids. It's probably the first one. Don't have kids, because there's no return policy on them. You can't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I regret buying these kids. Let's return them. Let's call Amazon and say, is the 30-day policy applicable to kids? That is a big question. Sadly, that's not the case. This, and probably the second the decision is buying a house. Like there is probably, like, a lot of people. I'm like, buying a house is better than renting. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't like if you're in like an extremely expensive real estate market. I am not sure that buying a house is better than renting. I don't think it is. And in fact, there's a lot of calculators and a lot of people out there who say that it's probably not the case. That you're better off investing the differential between the rental uh the rent and whatever you'd have been paying had you bought that house in the stock market, and you at the end you'd come out better. Again, it depends on the assumptions and whatnot, but what I'm very, very convinced of, though, is the fact that having kids is a life-changing decision with humongous implications, and I don't think people think that decision through as much as they should. Case in point is this couple making $500,000 a year and still ending with only $7,000 of savings at the end of the year. Maybe that's the lesson for today's video. But anyway, I think this is the end for me. I'll see you on the next one.